Hi, I'm Lincoln, and I'll be showing you how to make a custom mechanical keyboard. Making a keyboard can be simple, but very time consuming. Now, why would you want to make a custom keyboard? Well, custom keyboards are highly customizable, making it easy to make them look, feel, and sound better than your standard office keyboard. Before you start, you'll have to buy your keyboard components from an online retailer. I highly recommend KBD fans or Canon keys as they offer a variety of different keyboard parts. Also, it's important to know that many keyboards can vary in price and how you actually build them. For example, in this build, I'll be using a keyboard kit from Canon Keys called the Bakaneko 60, which has a unique mounting style in which it uses a gummy O-ring. Now here are some of the things you'll need. You'll need a case. This will house all of the keyboard components and act like a base for the keyboard. You also need a PCB. The PCB acts as a circuit board for the keyboard and allows for key presses to be made on the keyboard. You will also need a plate. The plate makes the keyboard feel more reinforced, so when you type something, the switches don't move all over the place. You also need a gummy O-ring. The gummy O-ring acts as a gasket and holds the keyboard together. The daughter board acts as an extension for the PCB, and it can allow for a more balanced typing feel. You need 61 switches. Switches are the mechanisms that actuate the pins on the PCB, which leads to a key press. You need 5 pairs of stabilizers. Stabilizers ensure stability with the keys that are larger than others. You'll also need keycaps. Keycaps are plastic pieces of material that go over the switches. Here are some other tools you'll most likely need: a keycap puller, a switch puller, tweezers, wire cutters, a screwdriver with a 1.5mm hex screw, a jeweler's tool, a nylon brush, a switch opener, a silicone-based lube like Krytox 205 Grade 0, dielectric grease, and switch films. Most of the tools mentioned can be found on Amazon or elsewhere, whether being by themselves or in kits designed for creating keyboards. Before we actually assemble the keyboard, I recommend lubing and modifying your switches and stabilizers, as it can reduce a pinging and rattly sound within the board, and overall makes the board sound and feel better. Let's go over lubing switches first. First, take your switch opener, then align the sides of your switch with the prongs of the switch opener. Then, push down on the switch and it should come apart. You should have 4 parts of the switch: the top housing, the stem, the spring, and the bottom housing. We will be lubing the bottom housing first. Take your bottom housing and take a small amount of lube. Lubricate one of the slider rails on the bottom housing, then move on to the other slider rail and lubricate it with your excess lube. After you've lubricated the bottom housing, you can apply your switch film with tweezers and carefully slide it onto the bottom housing. Lubing the spring is pretty easy. You just put a generous amount of lube on one side of the spring, then put it on top of the bottom housing. After you've done this, you can put more lube on the other end of the spring. You can now lube the stem. I recommend using the jeweler's tool in order to hold the stem in place as you lube it. Lube the stem by applying a small amount of lube on one end of the stem, then spreading the excess lube on the other 3 sides of the stem. After you've done this, you can lube the bottom of the stem and the pole underneath it. You can also lube the stem legs. However, if you're using a tactile switch, it isn't recommended. Now you just have to do this 60 more times, and you're done lubing and filming your switches. Lubing and modifying your stabilizers is the most important thing to make your keyboard sound and feel good. There are 3 main components of a stabilizer: the wire, the insert, and the housing. There should be 2 inserts and housings on each side of a stabilizer wire. If you are using the older stabilizer insert, you may see that the bottom of the stabilizer insert isn't flat. Using the wire cutters, we can clip these 2 fang-like protrusions, which results in a smoother feel when typed on. After clipping your stabilizer inserts, you can apply a thin amount of lube on each side of the insert. Once you're done lubing the insert, you can lube the housing. Lubing the housing is pretty simple, as you just apply a lube on the internal walls of the housing. When the stabilizer housing is lubed, you can install the stabilizer insert into the housing. Lastly, dip one end of the stabilizer wire in the dielectric grease and insert the stabilizer wire in the stem and housing. Repeat this for the other side of the stabilizer wire. Now we're able to start assembling the keyboard. First, we have to put our stabilizers in the PCB. There should be multiple holes on the PCB that look like this. This side of the stabilizer should be aligned with the larger holes, and this side of the stabilizers should be lined up with the smaller holes. You can use tweezers in order to help install the stabilizers. Put the plate on top of the stabilizers and PCB, then align your switches within the square holes of the plate. Make sure the pins of the switch align with the sockets on the PCB, as you can bend a switch pin if you're not careful, which can lead to a key press not working. After doing this 60 more times, you can wrap the gummy O-ring around the plate in between the PCB. Once you've done that, you can attach the GSD cable to the daughter board, then screw the daughter board into the case. Once it's screwed in, you can attach the other end of the GSD cable to the PCB, then carefully slide the PCB down the case. Finally, you can put the keycaps on, and voila, you now have a custom keyboard.